I used to believe that love, once chosen, stayed loyal on its own. That if two people promised each other a future, the world could shake, but their bond would not. I believed this because of her, my fiancée, the woman I planned to marry, the woman I trusted more than myself. We met when life was simple. No power games, no hidden intentions, no shadows lurking behind smiles. She laughed easily back then, laughed at my silly jokes, laughed when I talked about dreams that were far bigger than my bank account. I wasn't rich. I wasn't powerful. But I was honest, loyal, and completely hers. Or at least I thought I was. From the first day, she made me feel chosen. She would hold my hand in public, look at me as if the world faded behind my back. When she said, "I see my future with you," I didn't question it. Why would I? Her eyes never trembled when she said my name. Her voice never cracked when she spoke about forever. I trusted her too much. Our engagement felt like a victory over fate. Friends congratulated us, family smiled, and I stood there believing I had won the greatest prize. Love that didn't need conditions. She wore the ring proudly, posting pictures, letting the world know she was mine and I was hers. Every comment, every like felt like proof that what we had was real. But trust can blind you. Slowly, the warmth began to change. Not suddenly. No, betrayal is never loud at first. It whispers. It arrives disguised as stress, distance, exhaustion. She became busier. Messages replied late. Calls shortened. When I asked, she smiled and said, "Life is just overwhelming lately." And I believed her. There was someone else around her more often then. A friend. Someone she mentioned casually, like he didn't matter. "He understands me," she once said, without realizing how sharp those words were. I ignored the sting. Lovers don't question every sentence, I told myself. Lovers trust. I trusted. I planned our future with ridiculous optimism. I thought about our home, our mornings, the quiet comfort of growing old together. I worked harder, saved more, sacrificed silently. Everything I did was for us. When I was tired, I reminded myself that love was worth exhaustion. What I didn't know was that while I was building a future, she was rehearsing an exit. There were signs, small ones I brushed aside. Her phone always face down. Her sudden need for privacy. The way she avoided my eyes when certain names came up. Love makes you generous with excuses. I blamed work, stress, even myself. Maybe I wasn't exciting enough. Maybe I wasn't successful enough. Maybe love just needed patience. So I gave patience. Endless patience. The night I sensed something was truly wrong, she looked at me differently. Not with anger. Not with guilt. With calculation. As if she were measuring how much truth I could handle without breaking. She spoke carefully, choosing words that sounded harmless but felt heavy. "Do you trust me?" she asked. I smiled. "With my life." That was the moment I lost everything. Trust, I learned later, is not always a gift. Sometimes it's a weapon handed willingly to the person who will hurt you the most. I loved her in a way that didn't question motives. I loved her in a way that assumed loyalty was natural, not earned daily. I loved her with the innocence of someone who believed engagement meant safety. But love like that doesn't protect you. It exposes you. She started treating our relationship like something flexible, something that could bend to convenience. Meanwhile, I treated it like a vow already spoken. That difference, that imbalance, was the crack everything would eventually break through. I remember lying awake at night beside her, listening to her breathe, unaware that her heart was already drifting elsewhere. I remember feeling grateful, peaceful, secure, feelings that would soon feel foolish. Trust has a way of making memories painful after the truth is revealed. I didn't know yet that my love was being tested against desire, that my loyalty was being compared to temptation, that my role in her life was slowly shifting from partner to obstacle. And still I trusted. If someone had warned me then, if someone had told me love without awareness can be dangerous, I wouldn't have listened. Because when you're in love, warnings sound like jealousy, and doubt feels like betrayal. So I kept believing, kept loving, kept trusting. I didn't know that this trust would soon be used against me. That the woman I planned to marry would one day look at me and ask for something that would destroy us, so casually, so coldly, as if my heart were negotiable. But that comes later. This chapter is not about her betrayal yet. It's about my blindness, about the love I trusted too much, about the man I was before I learned that not everyone who holds your hand plans to walk beside you forever. This is where the story truly begins. Before the lover, before the divorce, before the regret, before everything fell apart. Truth doesn't arrive like thunder. It seeps in slowly, quietly, through the cracks you pretended didn't exist. I didn't discover her secret lover in a dramatic confrontation or a sudden confession. I realized he existed the way you realize a room has gone cold, by feeling the absence of warmth you once took for granted. After that night when she asked if I trusted her, something inside me shifted. Not suspicion, no, not yet. It was discomfort, a heaviness that settled in my chest without explanation. She was still there, still wearing the ring, still calling me by name. But her presence felt edited, as if parts of her had been removed when I wasn't looking. She started leaving early and returning late. When I asked where she'd been, the answers were vague but rehearsed. Out with friends. Work ran late. I needed space. Space. That word became her shield. I tried to be understanding. I told myself that love means giving freedom, not control. I didn't want to be the man who doubted the woman he loved. So I stayed quiet, even when my instincts screamed. Then came the name. She mentioned him one evening while scrolling through her phone, as if he were just another detail of the day. The way she said it, too casually, too smoothly, made my stomach tighten. It wasn't jealousy. It was recognition. A strange awareness that this name carried weight she didn't want me to feel. He helped me with something today, she said. I nodded. Asked nothing. But that night, sleep wouldn't come. The name replayed in my mind, paired with the way she smiled at her screen earlier. It wasn't the smile she gave me anymore. It was lighter, freer, as if she didn't have to explain herself to the person on the other side. That was the first real crack. Over the next few days, the signs multiplied. Messages deleted. Calls taken in another room. Her phone suddenly locked with a new password. When I reached for her hand, she pulled away, not sharply, just enough to make me notice. Love doesn't vanish overnight. It relocates. One evening, she fell asleep before me, her phone buzzing softly on the bedside table. I stared at it longer than I'm proud of. Every moral argument played in my head: trust, respect, boundaries. I'd lived by those rules my whole life. But something else spoke louder. If you don't look now, you'll keep lying to yourself. I picked up the phone. The password came to me easily. A date I thought was ours. That hurt more than what came next. The messages weren't explicit. They didn't need to be. Intimacy isn't always physical. It's emotional, subtle, coded. Late-night conversations. Shared jokes I'd never heard. Complaints about me, framed as misunderstandings. Comfort offered where it didn't belong. And there it was. The truth, sitting quietly on a glowing screen. I feel more myself when I'm with you. That sentence crushed me. I read in silence, my hands trembling, my chest tight. Each message felt like a step away from me, a step toward him. I saw how he validated her, how he positioned himself as the one who understood her. I saw how she allowed it, how she welcomed it. This wasn't a mistake. This was a choice. I put the phone back where I found it and lay beside her, staring at the ceiling until dawn. She slept peacefully, unaware, or maybe perfectly aware, of the storm breaking inside me. The next day, I watched her closely. Not with anger. With clarity. I noticed how her eyes lit up when her phone buzzed. How she dressed differently when she went out now, more carefully, more deliberately. How she spoke my name like it belonged to the past. I didn't confront her immediately. Part of me still hoped there was a misunderstanding, some explanation that could stitch this open wound shut. Another part of me knew better. When a person starts hiding, they've already crossed a line, even if they swear they haven't gone far. The confrontation happened on an ordinary afternoon. No shouting, no tears. Just me, her, and a truth that refused to stay buried. Who is he? I asked. She froze. That pause, that single second of silence, said more than any confession could. She tried to laugh it off at first. Called him a friend, then a support, then someone who just listens. Her words piled up, defensive and desperate, collapsing under their own weight. I told her what I'd seen. She didn't deny it. Instead, she sighed. That sigh destroyed me more than anger ever could. It wasn't guilt, it was relief. Relief that she didn't have to pretend anymore. I didn't plan this, she said. It just happened. But things don't just happen when boundaries are respected. She admitted he made her feel alive. That he gave her attention when she felt unseen. That being with me felt stable, while being with him felt exciting. I listened without interrupting, even as every word carved something out of me. I asked the question I was afraid to hear the answer to. Do you love him? She didn't say no. That was enough. In that moment, I understood something painful but freeing. I was no longer competing with another man. I was competing with a version of her that no longer chose me. And that battle was already lost. She didn't beg. She didn't cry. She explained, as if betrayal could be justified through language. As if love were a courtroom where feelings could be defended. I walked away from that conversation carrying a truth heavier than any lie. She hadn't just hidden a lover. She had already left the relationship in her heart. That night, I sat alone, replaying every memory through a new lens. Every moment she pulled away. Every time I felt like I was holding on to something slipping through my fingers. The signs were always there. I just loved her too much to see them. Her secret lover wasn't just a man. He was the proof that trust, once broken, doesn't shatter loudly. It collapses inward, leaving silence where certainty once lived. And this was only the beginning. Because soon, she would ask for something even crueler than understanding. Something she thought was temporary. Something she believed I would never take seriously. She was wrong. She brought it up on a day that looked ordinary enough to be forgotten. No storm outside. No raised voices. Just a quiet afternoon where the world moved on as if nothing was about to end. I was sitting across from her when she said it. Maybe we should get divorced for a while. For a moment, I thought I'd misheard her. Divorce wasn't a word that belonged to us. Not yet, not ever. We weren't even married that long, still learning each other's silences, still pretending wounds could heal if ignored. I waited for her to laugh, to correct herself, to say she meant something else. She didn't. She leaned back, calm, composed, as if she were discussing a temporary arrangement. A pause. Then she added the sentence that changed everything. It's just for now. To make things easier. Easier for whom? She explained it slowly, carefully, like someone laying out a plan they'd already rehearsed. Her lover didn't like the complications. The secrecy. The guilt. A divorce would remove the pressure, she said. It would quiet things down. Give her space to figure out what she wanted. It doesn't mean we're done, she added quickly, watching my face. You know that, right? This is just on paper. On paper. As if marriage were ink instead of blood. As if promises dissolved when stamped by a court. She spoke with confidence, with certainty, because in her mind, this wasn't a real ending. It was a performance. A show staged to keep another man comfortable, while keeping me safely waiting in the wings. She assumed I would understand. That I would agree. That I would stay. After all, I always had. I didn't speak at first. My thoughts were loud, crashing into each other, but my mouth refused to move. I stared at her, searching for hesitation, remorse, anything that looked like love. What I found instead was expectation. She expected me to accept it. You won't take this seriously, she said softly, reaching for my hand. You know me. You know I'd never really leave you. That was when I realized how differently we saw each other. To her, I was security. A constant. Someone who could be paused, set aside, picked up later when convenient. To me, she was my wife, my partner, the person I stood beside without conditions. She thought the divorce would be fake. A technicality. A temporary sacrifice I'd make, because I loved her. She underestimated what that love had already turned into. I asked her one question. If it's fake, I said, my voice steady despite the storm inside me. Why does it feel so real to me? She smiled gently, like you do when reassuring a child. That smile broke something in me. She talked about timelines. About how we could fix things later. About how this would calm her lover down, how it would remove tension, how it didn't mean I was losing her. But she never once asked how I felt. Not really. The divorce papers arrived faster than I expected. She handled everything, lawyer, dates, details. Efficient. Emotionless. As if she'd already mourned us and moved on. When I hesitated signing, she grew impatient. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? She asked. You're acting like this is permanent. Because for me it was. I signed the papers with a hand that didn't shake. Not because I wasn't hurting, but because clarity had settled in. If love had brought us here, then love alone wasn't enough to save us. She watched me sign, relief washing over her face. That was the moment she stopped being my wife in every way that mattered. The day the divorce was finalized, she treated it like an inconvenience checked off a list. No tears. No grief. She even joked nervously, saying we should celebrate surviving the drama. I didn't smile. We walked out of the building together, sunlight hitting our faces, people passing by unaware that a marriage had just ended. She slipped her arm through mine, casual, familiar. See, she said. Nothing's really changed. Everything had. That night, she packed a small bag. Not to leave me, she said, just to stay elsewhere for a while. Somewhere closer to him. Somewhere easier. Don't overthink this, she told me at the door. I'll be back before you know it. She kissed my cheek like you kiss someone you're sure will be waiting. The door closed behind her with a soft click. I stood there alone, listening to the echo of her footsteps fade. That sound, the quiet certainty of absence, made something undeniable clear. A fake divorce only works if both people are pretending. I wasn't. Days passed. Then weeks. Her messages became shorter. Her calls less frequent. She spoke about her lover openly now, without guilt, without apology. The divorce had freed her, not just legally, but emotionally. Meanwhile, I sat with the truth she refused to see. She had asked me to erase myself to keep another man comfortable. And I had agreed. But not in the way she thought. She believed I would stay attached. Available. Loyal in silence. She believed I would wait for her confusion to end. What she didn't understand was this. When you ask someone to divorce you, even just for show, you teach them how replaceable they are. And once a man understands that, he doesn't pretend anymore. The divorce she thought was fake was real the moment she asked for it. Real the moment she chose his comfort over my dignity. Real the moment she walked out believing I'd still be there when she returned. She would learn the truth later. For now, I let her believe the story she told herself, that I was still hers, that this was temporary, that love could be paused and resumed at will. I didn't correct her. Because sometimes the most powerful decision you can make is to say nothing and mean goodbye without announcing it. This was no longer her game. This was my ending beginning. Walking away doesn't happen in a single step. It happens in stages, small decisions stacking quietly until the weight of them pushes you forward. The day I walked away for real didn't begin with anger or courage. It began with exhaustion. I woke up to silence. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind that echoes. Her side of the bed was untouched, perfectly made, as if it had never belonged to anyone. For weeks, I'd lived like this, telling myself it was temporary, telling myself not to think too far ahead. That morning, the lie finally tasted bitter. I checked my phone out of habit. No message from her. No good morning. No explanation. Just notifications from a life that was no longer connected to mine. That was when I understood. I wasn't waiting for her anymore. I was waiting for permission to stop. I made coffee and drank it slowly, staring out the window at a city that didn't care what I was losing. People hurried past with purpose. They knew where they were going. I realized I hadn't asked myself that question in a long time. Where was I going? She called later that afternoon, her voice light, almost cheerful. She talked about her day, about small inconveniences, about plans she was making. She spoke like someone who assumed my presence without earning it. I'll come by later, she said casually. We should talk. We should talk. The words that usually meant I've decided something for both of us. For the first time, I didn't feel nervous. I felt calm. Clear. There's nothing left to talk about, I replied. There was a pause. A sharp one. What do you mean? She asked, confusion slipping into her tone. I didn't explain. I didn't argue. I simply said, I'm done. She laughed softly, not cruelly, dismissively. You're overreacting, she said. We've been through worse. But we hadn't. We'd been through compromise. Silence. Sacrifice. We'd never been through respect. When she arrived that evening, she walked in like she owned the space, like she hadn't dismantled everything inside it. She looked surprised to find boxes stacked neatly near the door. Her clothes folded. Her things separated. What is this? She asked. Closure, I said. She frowned, irritated. Don't do this. You're making things dramatic. Dramatic. That word again. As if pain were performance. As if leaving required justification beyond self-preservation. She started listing reasons. How this was temporary, how she needed time, how I was being unfair. She talked about her confusion, her stress, her feelings. She didn't mention mine. That's when something shifted permanently. I realized she wasn't trying to fix us. She was trying to keep access to me while giving herself freedom elsewhere. She wanted my loyalty without offering her own. My patience without accountability. My presence without commitment. And I was done being a placeholder in my own life. I'm not angry, I told her. I'm finished. Those words hit differently. Anger invites debate. Finality ends it. She stared at me, really stared, as if seeing me for the first time. The confidence drained from her face, replaced by uncertainty. You don't mean that, she said. You always come back. That assumption, that history guaranteed my future, was the last thing she had over me. I won't this time, I replied. She tried to cry then, tried to soften her voice, to remind me of memories, of promises. She talked about love like it was a safety net she could fall into whenever she slipped. But love doesn't survive entitlement. I handed her the last box. Take this, I said. And don't come back. She hesitated, waiting for me to change my mind. I didn't. When the door closed behind her, there was no dramatic collapse, no shouting, no tears. Just quiet. Heavy, honest quiet. And relief. Walking away didn't feel heroic. It felt lonely. It felt like stepping into a cold night without a coat. But for the first time in months, I wasn't betraying myself to keep someone else comfortable. The next few days were brutal. Silence has a way of amplifying thoughts you've been avoiding. I questioned myself. Wondered if I'd been too harsh. Too proud. Too final. Then the messages started. First confusion. Then anger. Then regret. She accused me of abandoning her. Of giving up too easily. Of not fighting for love. I read every message once, and didn't reply. Because love isn't proven by how much disrespect you endure. Friends noticed the change in me before I did. I spoke less, but with more certainty. I slept better. I stopped checking my phone every few minutes. I began rebuilding routines that belonged only to me. One evening, weeks later, she showed up unannounced. She looked different. Tired. Uncertain. He didn't work out, she said quietly. There it was. The truth beneath everything. She expected relief. Gratitude. An open door. Instead, she found distance. That's not my problem, I said calmly. She stared at me shocked. After everything? Yes. After everything. I didn't walk away because she chose another man. I walked away because she chose herself at my expense and expected me to stay grateful. The day I walked away for real wasn't loud or dramatic. It didn't look like revenge or victory. It looked like self-respect quietly choosing itself. I didn't win her back. I won myself. And that was something she could never take from me, no matter how much she regretted losing it later. Because once you walk away for real, you don't look back to see who's chasing. You keep walking toward a life that finally chooses you back. Regret doesn't arrive with an apology. It comes disguised as curiosity, then nostalgia, then panic. By the time she felt it fully, I was already gone in every way that mattered. At first, she didn't miss me. She missed the role I played in her life, the stability, the certainty, the quiet assurance that someone would always be there when the noise died down. When that safety net disappeared, the fall startled her. She started with small messages. Hey, just checking in. Hope you're doing okay. They were casual, careful. The kind of messages sent by someone testing the temperature of a door they once slammed shut. I replied politely at first. Short answers. Neutral words. No emotion attached. That confused her. She was used to my warmth. My concern. My availability. She was used to me asking questions, trying to understand, trying to fix what she broke. When she realized I wasn't doing any of that anymore, discomfort crept in. Then came the memories. Do you remember that trip we planned? I found that old photo of us today. Nostalgia is a powerful drug. She hoped it would soften me, pull me back into a version of us that no longer existed. But memories only hurt when you want to relive them. I didn't. Weeks passed. Her tone changed. Can we talk? I think we owe each other that. Oh, as if closure were a debt I had to pay. As if she hadn't already taken enough. When I agreed to meet, it wasn't hope that guided me. It was clarity. I wanted to see her, not as the woman I loved, but as the person she had chosen to become. She arrived early, dressed carefully, the way she used to when she wanted my attention. She smiled when she saw me, a familiar curve of the lips that once made me forget everything else. This time, it did nothing. She talked first. About how confused she'd been. How pressured. How she'd made mistakes. She spoke about regret like it was an explanation instead of a consequence. I didn't realize what I was losing, she said quietly. I thought you'd always be there. There it was. Not love. Not remorse. Assumption. She regretted losing access, not betraying me. I listened without interrupting. I'd learned that people reveal more when you don't rush them. She spoke about her lover too, how it burned fast and collapsed just as quickly. How promises faded when responsibility showed up. How excitement doesn't build a life. She looked at me then, eyes glossy. I chose wrong, she said. I see that now. Regret finally had a voice. But regret isn't powerful when it arrives late. It's just loud. I told her the truth. Not harshly, not cruelly, just honestly. You didn't choose wrong, I said. You chose exactly what you wanted at the time. That hurt her more than anger ever could. She shook her head, desperate to rewrite history. That's not fair. It is, I replied. Because choices only hurt when they're yours. She reached for my hand. I didn't pull away, but I didn't hold on either. That space between us said everything. She apologized then. A real apology, finally. No excuses. No justifications. Just words that should have come months earlier. And for a moment, a very brief one, I felt the weight of what could have been. The life we might have rebuilt if timing had been kinder, if respect had arrived sooner. But love doesn't wait forever. I forgive you, I said. Her face lit up until I finished the sentence. But forgiveness doesn't mean return. Her eyes widened, hope collapsing into shock. So that's it, she asked. After everything? Yes. After everything. She didn't understand how final it was until she saw it in my posture, my tone, the way I no longer leaned toward her. I wasn't protecting myself anymore. I was simply done. That realization broke something in her. She started crying, not softly, not gracefully. Desperately. The kind of crying that comes when control slips away. She begged then. Not dramatically, but earnestly. I'll do better, she said. I swear. Just give me one more chance. I believed her. That was the tragedy. I believed she would do better, just not with me. Your growth doesn't require my sacrifice anymore, I told her. And my healing doesn't need your regret. She looked at me like I'd spoken a language she didn't know. Because some lessons can't be learned until they cost you everything. After that day, the regret intensified. Late-night calls I didn't answer. Long messages I didn't read past the first line. Apologies layered over apologies. She watched my life from a distance, saw the changes, the calm, the direction returning to my steps. She realized I wasn't just surviving without her. I was thriving. That was when regret turned into fear. Fear of being replaced. Fear of becoming a chapter instead of the story. Fear of knowing that the man she once undervalued was now unavailable. Not because he was angry, but because he had moved on. She tried one last time months later. No tears. No drama. Just honesty. I miss you, she said. Not the idea of you. You. And for the first time, I felt sadness, not longing, not temptation. Just a quiet mourning for two people who loved each other at different times, in different ways. I know, I replied. But you met me when I was willing to settle. I won't go back to that man. That was when she finally understood. Her regret had arrived after my self-respect had already taken root. After I'd learned that love without dignity is just endurance. After I'd built a life where peace mattered more than familiarity. Regret needs timing. Hers missed it. She watched me walk away not once, but permanently. No dramatic exit. No slammed doors. Just distance growing until there was nothing left to reach for. And that is the cruelest kind of ending. Not hatred. Not revenge. Just the certainty that the person you lost will never return. Not because they can't, but because they won't. Her regret began too late. And by the time she truly understood the cost of her choices, I had already chosen myself, and meant it. There is a moment in every ending where clarity replaces chaos. The moment you stop asking why, stop hoping things will return to the way they were, and finally see the truth for what it is. That moment is not loud, not dramatic. It is quiet, irreversible, and devastatingly simple. That moment was mine the day I realized she had lost me forever. It wasn't sudden. The truth had been building, stacking up like invisible bricks over months of pain, betrayal, and heartbreak. Each lie she told, each secret she hid, each casual disregard for my feelings, each was a brick. And by the time she looked at me with wide, pleading eyes, begging for forgiveness, the wall between us was already complete. When she walked in that day, she expected something. Apology. Tears. Pleading. Perhaps she hoped my heart would bend under the weight of memory, of love that she once inspired. But I had learned by then that love without respect, without honesty, without reciprocity, is a dangerous thing to hold on to. I had learned that forgiving her wouldn't undo her choices, and waiting for her regret wouldn't return what I had lost. Her eyes searched mine, full of fear and hesitation, as if noticing for the first time that I had changed. That I was no longer the man who would quietly endure betrayal, who would sacrifice himself for someone who didn't value him. She took a step closer. Please. I was wrong, she said softly. I didn't know what I had. I've made mistakes, but I can fix them. We can. I stopped her with a single look. Not anger, not disdain, simply calm, unwavering certainty. No, I said quietly. There is no we anymore. The weight of that word hit her harder than any argument, any confrontation we'd ever had. It was simple, final. I was not angry, I was not hurt for show, I was resolute. And in that resolution, she felt her power slip away. But I love you, she whispered, almost as if saying it aloud could bend reality back to her favor. Love. She threw the word around as though it could undo everything she had broken. But love without loyalty, love without commitment, love without trust, it is meaningless. I had loved her fully, blindly, unconditionally. She had taken that love for granted, abused it, and expected it would always be there when convenient. Love, I echoed, my voice calm but steady. You call this love? You chose someone else over me. You asked me to divorce you for him. You thought I would wait. That's not love. That's selfishness. Her face fell. Not in shame, but in recognition. Recognition that she had underestimated the cost of her choices. Recognition that she had assumed I would always remain at her disposal, ready to forgive, ready to return, ready to sacrifice myself so she could have both freedom and security. I could feel the tension in the room shift as she tried to grasp what she had lost. For months, she had believed that her charm, her manipulation, her words could always bend reality to her favor. But reality does not bend for betrayal. Reality is cold, precise, and indifferent. And it had already declared its judgment. I didn't mean for it to be like this, she said, desperation creeping in. I thought I could. I don't know manage everything. Manage. That was the word that exposed her truth. She never cared about us. She cared about control, about comfort, about convenience. And when life demanded accountability, she demanded escape. You had your chance, I said, my tone unwavering. You had every chance in the world to choose honesty, to choose respect, to choose me. But you didn't. You chose him. You chose your selfishness. And now you've lost me forever. For the first time, I saw fear. Real fear. Not the casual anxiety of a momentary inconvenience, but the kind of fear that comes when you realize you've lost something irretrievably valuable. She realized that I wasn't just walking away physically. I was walking away emotionally, mentally, spiritually. The part of me that loved her was gone. It had been replaced with clarity, with dignity, with the knowledge that I deserved better. She tried one last appeal. She reached out, her hand trembling, her voice pleading. I'll change. I can be better. Just don't go. But I stepped back. Not in cruelty, but in finality. It's too late, I said. You can't rewrite the past. You can't undo the choices you made. And you can't have me back. Her face twisted with disbelief, anger, and sorrow all at once. She hadn't anticipated that my departure would be complete. She hadn't anticipated that my love had limits. Limits she had crossed without hesitation. She hadn't realized that while she had been playing games, I had been learning, growing, and reclaiming myself. I turned away from her then, slowly, deliberately, leaving nothing unresolved. I didn't glance back. I didn't look for a last smile, a last tear, a last sign of regret. I didn't need one. The silence that followed spoke louder than any words she could offer. Outside, the air was crisp, sharp with the reality of freedom. I walked without looking back, feeling a lightness that had been impossible for months, years even. Every step away from her was a reclamation of my life, a restoration of my dignity, a confirmation that I was no longer bound by the mistakes of someone who never truly valued me. In the following days, I allowed myself to remember the good times without being ensnared by them. I remembered the laughter, the intimacy, the warmth, but I also remembered the betrayals, the lies, and the nights I cried silently while she slept beside me unaware. Each memory was a lesson, each lesson a brick in the new foundation of my life. She tried to follow, calling after me, sending desperate messages into my world. But I didn't stop. I didn't falter. I didn't respond. Every plea, every confession of regret, bounced off the walls of my restored self-worth. Months passed. Life carried on smoother, freer. Opportunities one had neglected while waiting for her unfolded. I rebuilt friendships, pursued ambitions, and learned to love myself in ways she had never encouraged. Every step forward was a reminder that the man she lost was not diminished. He was elevated. Stronger. Wiser. Unavailable. And she knew it. Every encounter, every message ignored, Every glimpse she caught of me thriving was a silent testament to the fact that I had moved on. She had not just lost a partner. She had lost someone irreplaceable. Finally, she understood that some doors, once closed, cannot be reopened. Some trust, once broken, cannot be rebuilt. Some love, once betrayed, cannot be reclaimed. The day she accepted it fully, when she stopped hoping, stopped pleading, stopped expecting me to return, was the day I truly knew she had lost me forever. And in that knowledge, I found something extraordinary: freedom. Freedom to live without compromise, without deceit, without manipulation. Freedom to love life and myself fully, unconditionally, and without regret. Freedom from the shadows of someone who never deserved my loyalty. She had been my fiancée, my lover, my closest companion. But she had chosen another path, a path of selfishness and betrayal. And in doing so, she forfeited every chance of walking beside me again. I walked forward, unburdened, unafraid, unstoppable. She had lost me forever, but I had found myself. And that, in the end, was far more precious than anything she could have ever offered. Because some doors, once closed, lead to the life you were always meant to live. And I had finally stepped through.